Most students think that office hours are like being sent to the principal's office. They think that you only go to office hours if you're failing a class or you're in trouble or something else is wrong. But as someone who was a psychology professor for a decade, let me tell you one of the unwritten rules of university life. Office hours are part of where the real deal happens for you as a student. If you are not going to office hours, you're paying full price for half the education. I'm Dr. Park, and I've spent 20 years as a psychologist for students and 10 years as a professor. Today we're opening the book on unwritten rules of office hours, what they actually are, and why they're your secret weapon for success. So let's start with what office hours actually are. What actually are office hours? So technically they're this block of time where a professor is required to be there and available to you as a student. And of course that could happen in person in their office, it might happen online. And I want you to not just look at office hours as a tutoring session. It can be that if you have a question about their class, but I want you to take an even bigger view of office hours. I want you to think of these as an opportunity to build social capital. What is social capital? It is the richness of relationships in your life. During these university years, you are flexing your brain and gaining knowledge. You are hopefully initiating and maintaining friendships. Maybe you're doing the dating thing, and you're growing as a person in all these different dimensions. You are also building social capital. You are building the network of relationships that enrich your life. Every person in your life is a part of this web, this network that you're building, and that includes your professors, your TAs, your RAs, pretty much everyone on campus. My experience has been that post-graduation, both after my bachelor's and after grad school, pretty much every opportunity that opened up for me personally or professionally opened up because of relationships in my life. Building relationship with your professors and other folks on campus enriches your life. It also enriches their life. So it's this mutual, beautiful type of thing that we do want to happen more and more. Think of your professors as a wellspring of wisdom when it comes to learning about your field, writing letters of recommendation for you, and guiding you on your future path. These are the Yodas that you want alongside you on your Jedi journey through your years. So we've talked about what office hours actually are, but let's talk about this psychological barrier that comes up for us as students when it comes to actually going to office hours. There can be a high barrier to entry when it comes to actually going, and what I mean by that is that it's scary and there's a lot of barriers there. So hopefully we've established what the office hours are for. They're for talking with your professor and building a relationship with them. And it can be scary because you might be afraid you'll look stupid, you might be afraid they're going to judge you, you might feel like you don't have a good enough question, you might feel intimidated that there's all these books on their shelf, and they wrote half those books. Let me tell you, I did not write half these books. I don't think I wrote any of these books. And I kind of joke with people like, just because I have books behind me, don't assume that I've read them. I basically have the books on the shelf that I want to read. And you might also be afraid, one that I hear from students a lot is you might be afraid of like freezing up, getting paralyzed. You might be afraid that your brain is just going to go blank. Could happen. I can't promise you that it won't, but I promise you that if you try to get outside your comfort zone, you might surprise yourself. And that's the only way that we grow, is by getting uncomfortable and pressing into the discomfort so that our comfort zone expands. If your brain freezes up, you can just be funny, right? You can be like, oh my gosh, it's so funny. I totally had a question for you and I forgot. And then they're just going to talk with you. It's going to be fine. So I want to let you in on a few secrets here about office hours. One is that professors, sorry, I'm laughing when I say this. Professors are people too. They might be tired. They might even be exhausted. They might be frazzled. They might be stressed. They might be having a bad hair day. They're probably feeling pulled in multiple impossible competing directions, and they are a person just like you are a person as well. Try to humanize them in your mind and try to see them as a person who gets nervous, a person who makes mistakes, a person who has questions, doesn't know things, and carries uncertainty inside of them. And they may not show you those parts of themselves because they're kind of socialized not to. You know, a lot of professors, I wish that we felt more comfortable saying, I don't know. And that is the humble thing to say. But a lot of professors feel like they're socialized to always have the answers because they're constantly getting asked questions. But try to see them as a person, just as you two are a person. If you enjoy the class of a particular professor, the odds are in your favor that this is probably one of those professors who says this behind closed doors. What makes my job worth it is the students. What makes my job worth it is the students. What does that mean for you as a student? It means that if you show up to their office hours in a friendly way, if you demonstrate interest in them as your professor, and if you demonstrate interest in their class or their field of study, you might even make their day. And I don't know if that ever occurred to you, but like, they're having a day, you're having a day. You could even make their day. You could be a highlight of their day just by showing up, popping in. You could even just make your question, how are you? So let's talk about why you should go to office hours. Like, what is the actual reason for why you would go? One is that you're going to get the benefit of the doubt from your professor because they're going to see you as a person. And it's not that they don't see you as a person, it's just that, like, if they haven't had a conversation with you in a more personal way outside the classroom, they just don't know you, right? You're a little more unknowable, you're a little more unfamiliar to them. And so if you visit their office hours, you know, later down the line, if they see some homework from you, maybe a paper that you wrote, and it belongs to a face that they recognize from office hours, they're gonna read that paper differently, and they're gonna see your effort, not just your typos. So they might be more willing to give you a benefit of the doubt. And they're still gonna try to grade your paper like fairly and objectively. They have their rubric, and you know, we love our rubrics and all that, but you know, it never hurts to get to know someone as a person and to let you to it never hurts to get to know someone as a person, and it never hurts to let them get to know you as a person, not just a student. So a second reason for going is that later down the line you might need a letter of recommendation, and a professor really can't write you a letter of recommendation unless they've had the opportunity to get to know you as a student. There are actually situations where professors will say, unfortunately, I can't write you a letter of recommendation. I really haven't had opportunities to get to know you outside of class. I don't have much context on who you were as a student in my class, and so on. So I'm not trying to scare you by saying that. I'm just saying every once in a rare while, a professor does have to say that because they're like, gosh, I don't know this person, so I can't even like ethically write a letter for them. Give them the opportunity to get to know you as a student, as a person. And a third reason that you might want to go to office hours is what I'm going to call the hidden syllabus. And in office hours, you know, I would sometimes have conversations with students where they would bring in the study guide for an upcoming exam, and we would have a conversation not just about like what to study, but how to study. So they would talk with me about like how they are approaching their studying, and I would very much appreciate getting to learn that as their professor, but I would also kind of guide them or give them tips on how they are studying. And so that's where you learn some strategies that you may not necessarily learn in class. You could call that the hidden syllabus. So, I'm also going to give you some tips about when you go to office hours, what to say, and how to handle that time. So, one tip here is to introduce yourself. And unless it's a really small class where you know that this professor is going to know what class you're in, I want you to introduce yourself with your name and tell them what class you're in. So you might say, "Hi, Professor so and so. My name is Jackie. I'm in your Monday, Wednesday Psych 101 class at 1 o'clock." And then the next thing you're going to say, tip number 2, say something like, "Do you have a few minutes for a question?" Or, "Would it be okay if I ask you a question?" That's how you can kind of open up the conversation. Now, as I said earlier, your question could also just be, "How's your day going?" "How are you?" Right? Third tip is that if you do want a question beyond "How is your day going? How are you?" you can ask a question that is clarifying a concept that you're learning in their class. You can ask something else about their class. You can ask about their field of study. You can ask about their research. You can ask them for advice about internships or jobs. There's a lot that's on the table here, and I do want you to be careful about boundaries, especially if you haven't talked to this professor before. I don't want you to go in and talk to them all about your dating troubles or something that's a little more personal like that. So the safest bet is to start with something academic as you're getting to know them. Depending on, what kind of relationship you form with them later down the line, you could talk with them about a dating situation or a family situation, but you really need to build up some trust and some safety and some relationship with them before you would do that. So the safest bet is to talk about something academic, and I'm going to recommend that you not ask a question. Don't hate me for saying this. Don't ask a question that is answered by the syllabus. Does that mean you need to sit and read the syllabus word for word? No. It just means don't go in with a question that's like, "What time is our class?" Or "What reading is due for next class?" Or "What assignment is due?" Because they might get kind of annoyed by that, to be honest. So think about your question ahead of time. Make it thoughtful. Make it a open-ended question that you can converse about. And you could say, "I'm really loving your chemistry class, and I'm kind of surprised that I'm liking a science class because I haven't in the past. When people get a degree in chemistry, what kind of jobs do they end up getting? Is that something you'd recommend?" That was 2 questions, but just trying to improv how you could approach the conversation. So another tip I have for you about going to office hours is that yes, you can go by yourself, but we also don't need to be individualistic about it. You can go with a friend. You can bring a buddy. You can go as a group of 3 or a group of 4. I had a group of students that used to visit my office hours, and I would call them the molecule because they always traveled together as a group of 3 or a group of 4, and that was totally cool with me. It enriched our conversation. It was so much fun to get to know them as a group and see how they're similar and see how they're different, and we just had some really great conversations over those years. My last tip for you about office hours is try not to overstay your welcome. So the professor is required to be there for those hours, and you want to be respectful about their time. And I don't know, I'm kind of ballparking here. I don't know what other professors would say, but I'd say maybe somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes should be kind of your upper limit of how long you stay. If there's a line of students out the door, please ask your question and then politely excuse yourself. But if there's no line of students outside the door, maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then say, "Thank you so much. It's been so fun chatting with you and would love to connect another time. I'm going to go get something from the cafeteria. I hope you have a great rest of your day." And that's kind of a polite way of closing out the conversation. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, they are required to be there for office hours, but don't treat them like a captive audience. And this is something that I needed to hear as a student. this is something I wish I had done differently or someone had told me. But you're respectful of their time. They probably have other things that they're also trying to do or other conversations they need to have. So let's say 15-20 minutes max for your visit. So those are my tips. Hope it's helpful for you when it comes to office hours. And campus life just has a lot of rules that they don't put in the student handbook. But don't worry, I'm here to help you read between the lines. I'm Dr. Park, and I'll see you in the next episode of Unwritten Rules.